You're with India Post Live, India's first online news conversation web TV. I'm Ishan Russell, and India Post Live is a forum where, of course, you can participate. It's all about your participation, and we'd love for you to come in. You can use social media to come in. You can use Twitter, hashtag India Post Live to your tweets, or use our Twitter handle at India Post Live, or you can use Facebook, India Post Live. The Facebook page is there. Just go there, like it, and comment. You can follow us from there as well. Or you can just go to indiapostlive.com. You can view this video and other videos, and you can even come in via Skype or Google Hangout, or even post on the wall over there we have of comments. Now, the issue that we're talking about today is about the media. It's about ownership of media, and in the country there's a new government, and there has been a major takeover of a media house. Reliance has taken over TV18. Now, what does this mean for the media at large? There have been issues about ownership, about vested interests of corporates in media houses. Are those really vested? Are they just investors? So we'll try to figure that out today during the show, but first the setup package.
In what's being termed as the biggest takeover of a media house, Mukesh Ambani-led Reliance Industries has acquired Network 18 Media and Investments Limited. The deal is worth 4,000 crore rupees. Reliance will fund it through Independent Media Trust into Network 18. Network 18's boss Raghav Behel has already resigned, while Editor-in-Chief Rajdeep Sardesai has been asked to put in his papers. The new management will run the network according to editorial standards set by them. Critics have raised concerns about its impact on news coverage of the new Modi-led government, as Reliance has close ties with the new regime. But this acquisition raises more questions. How far will it influence the quality of journalism in Network 18 Group? Can this step be seen as the first step towards corporatization of Indian media?
All right, so is it or is it not? You can also join in this conversation. We have a panel of editors, very senior editors who really control in terms of a lot in terms of media understanding. They write and are really respected. We have Mr. Vinod Sharma, he's the political editor of the Hindustan Times. Thank you very much for coming in. We have Venkatesh Ramakrishnan, he's the associate editor, beg pardon, at the Frontline magazine. We also have Amu Joseph. She's a well-known author, journalist, has written so many books. She really needs no introduction. Also, Paranjay Gua Thakurta has been an independent media voice, and I believe at one point of time was in the initial team of TV18 as well, so he can perhaps shed light on how it all started. And Seema Mustafa is the editor-in-chief of the Citizen.in and a respected journalist and an editor. Thank you very much for coming in, all of you. Vinod sir, your take on this big takeover. A lot of concerns are being raised, even senior editors are writing about it.
Yeah, that's right. First of all, I'd like to clarify that my views may not match with the views of the paper I write for. But having said that, you raised a basic question whether this marks the beginning of the corporatization of Indian media. I think Indian media already stands corporatized for a long, long time. You see, you look at the business model of various newspapers and television channels. Because people are not willing to pay for information, we have to sell newspapers at way below the cost, the production cost. Every single copy of the newspaper which is delivered to its readers every morning, you make a loss of about 10 to 12 rupees per copy. So where do you make up that loss? From advertisement. And where does it come from? Big business. So insofar as corporatization of Indian media is concerned, that indirect corporatization was already there. And there wasn't enough legal framework available in this country. For instance, we don't have very many strong antitrust laws in this country, and there is a tendency towards monopoly, and monopoly of media means putting mind and ideas in the vaults of the capital, and that's what seems to be happening. I think that the people, the readers at large in this country need to become more demanding. They need to be willing to pay for information, and they should refuse to accept this deal at all.
All right. Seema, you're one of the few people who have written about this issue, if I remember correctly, a couple of months ago as well, and had really said that this could be the start of the takeover of Indian media. So how do you view this development?
Who's that?
Seema, can you hear me? Ishan this side?
Oh, yeah, you're asking me that question.
Yes.
Sorry, it's that, yeah. Okay, yeah, well, I think it is. I think it's very clear, and this is the only good thing about this takeover is it's upfront. So you at least have a figure of the amount of money that was spent, apparently 4,000 crores. And the industrial house that has done this takeover is now declaring that it is the owner of a big clutch of news, of web and television channels. But what about the fact that there are industrial houses, and many of them who we know, who are controlling the media from behind? So there's also that covert operation where a lot of money, which you know and you whispered about, and maybe the persons working inside tell you about it, that money has gone into various companies and media houses.
Right, Amu, I believe you can't hear Seema. Sorry, Seema, for interrupting you. We'll just come to you, but just continue, Seema. Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so that's what I was just saying, that what about the covert operations of all these big corporates who have bought media houses without declaring the ownership? They bought it by pumping money from behind. Now, these kind of things, this is why a lot of journalists and others have been asking and have been demanding, but somehow our voices are really in the minority, that every media house, and especially all these mega houses, must declare their ownership pattern. They must let us know who owns them, where the money is coming, what are the salaries. When we demand transparency from the world, then we have to be transparent ourselves.
All right, Venkatesh, is this something that Indian media really had to come to terms with, and just in terms of where is the money coming from and how is it really being run? And after all, I mean, I think since independence, it was the corporate houses that funded journalism, so to say, in terms of a philanthropic activity. Has that ceased to exist now?
I think that has ceased to exist long time ago, as Vinod had suggested. In fact, if you look at the kind of ownership that you have in media at this point of time, there is corporate ownership and there is political capital. I mean, that is something again which has come up in a big way. And if you look at the last few years, you will see that, there are very many areas where this political capital in media and the corporate capital in media are working together. And going by the experience of the last general elections and the kind of trend that we have seen in the last general elections, and with this takeover, I feel that this trend is becoming more and more sharper. It is getting more and more aggressive and getting more and more dangerous.
Amu Joseph, your take on the matter? Hi, can you hear us? Right, we seem to be having a connection problem with her. But we'll meanwhile go to Parunjoy. Parunjoy, thank you very much for joining in. This is something that you'd also written about, and I remember discussing about the SBI takeover, SBI merger, sorry, not merger, but SBI Reliance deal, and you were saying that in last mile connectivity, that was in terms of banking, the Reliance gaining a very strong foothold in the media. Now this deal seals it for them in the media as well.
Sean, I kind of heard what some of the others said in bits and pieces. I didn't hear them in full detail. So I might end up repeating some of the points that have already been made. Essentially, what happens is, India's richest man is also India's biggest media baron. Now, this obviously means that if you want to say something which is against Reliance, if you want to express an opinion which is against Mr. Ambani, though the space for expression of such views narrows and shrinks. Now, what Vinod Sharma said, I heard a bit of what he said. You see, across the world and also in India, the media is getting squeezed from two ends. One is because of the Great Recession in the West, and also the slowdown in countries like India. Advertising expenditures and expenditure on marketing services is coming down, is shrinking. Simultaneously, the internet, the expansion of the internet, is making information, large volumes of information available virtually free. So the traditional media is facing a big crisis. Now, when you look at leading media entrepreneurs of our times, one was Mr. Raghav Bahl and the other was Mr. Arun Puri. Both of them experienced huge difficulty and were strapped for cash. In the case of Mr. Behel, in January 2012, Mr. Mukesh Ambani's companies moved in. And now he's out. Mr. Behel and his team is out, and Mr. Ambani is the boss in more than 50% of the world. He's not just an investor, he's controlling the ownership and also the content. Now, for him, in fact, makes good business sense because it sort of dovetails into his 4G, kind of rollout, the Reliance Jio rollout. And at the time, because of technological convergence, the division between broadcasting and telecommunications is virtually blurred.
Right.
It doesn't exist. But is this good for the reader? Is this good for the viewer? Is it good for the listener? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that the space for expressing viewpoints which are different, even these viewpoints belong to that of a minority. So the role of the media as the adversary, as somebody who puts on those who are in positions of power and authority, as Venkatesh was saying, it's political capital, it's corporate capital. So the space for expressing views which are contrary to those who are in positions of
Right.
in my opinion, it would narrow.
All right, the space for dissent really would narrow is what Paranjoy is saying. But Vinod sir, we've seen this pattern across the world. I mean, in America, the big Gs own a certain, the Fox Studios own so much, the Warner Brothers own so much, and that kind of control already exists. Now, is that same pattern repeating itself in India, and do we see more of this happening?
I can cite you two examples, both diametrically opposite. I remember that in the last phases of the Washington Post, and I think that if I'm wrong, that correct me, that there was a meeting set up between the big corporate honchos and the top editorial team of Washington Post, and there was a big hue and cry. Many people refused to show up because it was perceived to be indirectly an effort to influence the editorial team of the Washington Post. Similarly, you have in the United Kingdom a newspaper called The Guardian, which is funded by Scott Foundation, and they found a way out, and in the sense that it is professedly pro-Labour newspaper, and they on the day of the polling say that why you should vote for the Labour Party, and also they are objective to the extent that they also say that these candidates of Labour Party are not good candidates and these are good candidates, but they are able to retain that freedom, or at least a semblance of it, because the Scott Foundation is the foundation that invests money in other businesses and makes profits and plows them back into the Guardian. Now, nobody has dared in our country to try that model. And that is why, we have in India a media which is, in fact, not exactly the marketplace of ideas. And that makes one feel that is free market economy compatible with free speech? I mean, this is a fundamental question that has to be answered today, that if capital interests are going to acquire this much of stake in various platforms that are available for a variety of views, would variety suffer? Would it become standard opinion on key issues facing the country and its people? Some people from within the media community have to acquire the leadership in order to educate and to lead a campaign. We saw a campaign during Rajiv Gandhi's time against the anti-defamation law. And I thought it was a very robust campaign because that law was perceived to be antithetical to press freedom. And I think that certain business moves, and I don't want to name any company specific because I know that many big media houses, many big corporations in India, Indian corporations, have stakes, and as Seema pointed out, those are covert stakes, they are not known, but all of us know that they have picked up stakes in equity in various groups. Now, the debate has to be there in this country if we really value press freedom. Why do we have press freedom, for instance? For why this India requires a free press? Because I mean, honest dissemination of information empowers public opinion and thereby makes democracy stronger. That's the concept. Now, is this the way to make democracy stronger? And if somebody, I say that if somebody were to go to the Supreme Court of India today and ask for close scrutiny of the concept of press freedom and whether the freedom that is bequeathed to us, a derived freedom through the free speech, whether it is being honestly practiced. This question has to be answered, either by a debate within the community or by courts of law.
All right, but sir, the point is, and Seema, I'd like to ask you about this. But whenever the sort of media houses have come under fire, we saw what happened after the 2G case and Neera Radia and the entire Harabaloo. But the media says we'll self-correct, we'll do everything right. The editors sit together. There's an editors guild. There's a press council of India. But really, that independence of voice, ultimately, if you don't have the money as a journalist to be that independent, you can't ever be that independent.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. Because I think the real problem is, that after the emergency and after censorship, as it were, there was a genuine protest for several years. But as the corporate takeover consolidated in this country, they have their proprietors and their pick of editors, who might not always be the professionals from the field, are, citing this over and over again, that, let the media decide. Let the journalists decide. I mean, in certain bodies, which I don't want to name, but which I'm part of, when you go for those meetings, it is predictable that there will be a whole bunch of guys who are really the editors-in-chief of all these various television and print media, who stand over there and say, well, we cannot allow ourselves to be touched. Yes, we do not want to be touched by the government. But we also don't want to be touched by the corporates. We don't want to be censored by either. So that is where the independent journalist has to assert himself and herself and ensure that, these bodies, the journalistic bodies which you name, which seem to be, all these very independent bodies, but are no longer bodies, are sort of brought under some level of control, and to realize that the media is not answering and not acting like Vinod just said. We're no longer the watchdogs of the people. We are no longer the custodians of the Indian Constitution. We are no longer the harbingers, as it were, of justice and the law. We are just people patting each other's backs. We are a big social club of the rich and the powerful. When is that going to change, and is it going to change?
Is it, Venkatesh, could the internet give rise to more independent journalism, more voices being heard, more questions being raised?
Certainly, that is one stream of media which is still not completely under the control of the corporate houses or the political capital. But I am not sure how long this stream will also remain. The way things are going, for example, one also knows that that just like the airwaves, you can also control internet traffic. Right. So it's not as though it's so. As of now, it is certainly free. It provides a space for, but then the kind of corporate control that that the whole web internet space has, that's also certainly an aspect which one needs to look into.
All right, so the internet was also not safe. Bappa, though, is using the internet to join us all the way from Baltimore in the United States. Thank you very much for coming in, Bappa. What would your question or comment be for our editors?
Yeah, as you all know that I'm a sympathizer of the Aam Aadmi Party, so all my views should be seen in that context. I was just wanted to bring to your attention and to your viewers' attention one of the interviews that Arvind Kejriwal did with Sanjay Pugalia, who is the editor or presenter on CNBC or something like that. I think CNBC. It's on YouTube. And during that interview, the moment, as his wont, Kejriwal took Ambani's name, and the moment he did, it was like kryptonite. Pugalia completely lost his temper and started yelling at him. And the contempt that he was showing to Kejriwal throughout that interview since that point on
All right.
was amazing to watch. So, as a viewer, I mean, like whether you like Kejriwal or not is.
There was another one also, I believe, with Punya Prasun Vajpayee, that Kejriwal's conversation. So
yeah, of course. I mean, like I'm not saying that Kejriwal is a saint, but
the collusion is what you're pointing to often.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. If Kejriwal does it, it's equally bad. But I'm saying that journalists cannot be sanctimonious because politicians will find out who is owning them and will raise that issue during interviews and will hit them with that. So journalists have to be prepared for that and can't lose their temper on that issue, because then Pugalia did another interview with Narendra Modi, and the kind of deference he was showing to Narendra Modi was apparent for any viewer to see. So you know, like we are, as viewers, we are watching this, and we can make out what's going on. So I'm just giving a viewer's perspective.
Right.
I'm not a journalist. I don't have a stake in the profession. But you have to, like as journalists, you have to realize that this is what the viewers are thinking.
All right, but as far as the standard of journalism, that is often the question raised, that everybody, I mean, the 24-hour news reporting, whether you're in a newspaper now, you have to constantly tweet and be updated and almost compete with the TV channel, Vinod sir. So how does this, the quality of journalism, is that question being addressed by the media itself? And I mean, we can talk about corporate takeover of the media, but at the end of the day, the independence of the media is ultimately its own tool.
Well, I don't have any empirical data to support what I'm going to just say, but I've heard it from some sociologists that, you know, some of the growing population of India, you know, which played a crucial role in the just concluded elections, I mean, at least in the countryside, you know, the kind of language they speak is so similar to the one they hear on television. And one had a first-hand experience of that while traveling during the recent elections. One also heard a whole lot of nasty things about the Indian media. And they were a kind of repeat of what my friend, the Aam Aadmi Party leader just now said, of what Mr. Arvind Kejriwal talks about the media or about the big business. My friend from the Aam Aadmi Party said that he's not a stakeholder. So, because he's not a journalist. No, he is a stakeholder, and he is the prime stakeholder as a consumer. You see, you're speaking from Canada, if I'm not.
No, he's from the US.
You're from the US. What do the antitrust laws in your country, the country where you stay, what do they say? They are all about protecting the consumer's interest and to save the market from monopolies. No, are we doing that in this country? So I think that it's unfortunate that the viewers or the consumers of information don't consider themselves to be stakeholders in the sense that they should be stakeholders because they're getting everything for free. And it's not just because they're getting everything for free on the internet. You see, the irony is that the internet is at once an asset and a liability for a journalist. A journalist who in the good old days will have to toil for hours on end to get some bit of information by way of a backgrounder or giving a historical perspective to something he was writing, he gets it at the click of the mouse, and he stopped treating information, the commodity in which he deals, with the kind of care and respect he should, because it is coming it easy to him. And similarly, the consumers are also getting it easy and free. And they are not trying to apply any yardsticks to it. Once you start applying the yardsticks, once you start demanding quality information, distilled information, unadulterated information, no amount of capital interference will work. But there has to be a popular movement in this country to achieve that. Because as in a democracy, you get the government you deserve. In a democracy, you also get the media you deserve.
All right, the interesting point over there. I want to just bring in a few voices from the people. You went out on the street and asked the people what they thought about the corporatization of media, as people are calling it. So let's listen into that.
I think Reliance taking over Network 18 is only the first step, and eventually the Indian media will run a top way.
Network 18 deal may be the biggest deal in the media history, but there were questions raised by the media that who will do a story on KG gas basin, which is already in dispute with the government. So there are questions being raised by the media houses, by the real-time media journalists, that after the acquisition of Network 18, so who are the major journalists and the media houses who will take care of that KG basin gas story? Now what comes into my mind, whether CNN will cover this story or not, that's the biggest question.
All right, Venkatesh, so you heard the voices of the people. Media bashing has become sort of the cool thing to do these days, if I may say so. So, how does the media recover from this? Where do we go from here? And are we heading for darker days, so to say?
No, personally, I feel that there is not much in what an individual journalist can do. What Vinod said is absolutely right. I mean, the stakeholders, the actual stakeholders are the consumers, are the people who watch television, who read newspapers, who watch program like ours. They need to come up and say that that your program had these deficiencies, or it was objective. It had lacked accuracy. I think unless and until if there is a popular movement, a movement which is driven essentially by the consumers, by the people, in trying to get an element of course correction into the media, it's very easy to kind of sell yourself for a price. As in any other field. So the individual journalist, of course, has got his responsibilities and his things, but then it will not come automatically.
Would government intervention in any
in Kerala, for instance, the day the newspapers come out with jackets, advertisement jackets, the readers there react almost violently. They bombard the publishers and the editors with letters and asking them as to what is it that you are delivering on our doorsteps in the morning. We want news, not news hidden in a jacket of advertisement. So I think that, the reader has to assert his importance in the business, and he is a consumer, and it is because of him that newspapers are perceived as vehicles for influence peddling. And if he refuses to be influenced, I think the game is up. But then it's a difficult thing. It might take years to arrive at that kind of a situation. You have to do something in the short run. About that, I don't know what to do. I'm totally at my wit's end on that.
All right, Paranjay, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, what I want to say, that across the world and certainly in India, there is a crisis of credibility, especially in large sections of the media. What Vinod, what Venkatesh and others are saying is we have to look at new models of funding quality journalism and new models, financial models of financing journalism, investigative journalism, to insulate it from those who would influence it, whether it be politicians, whether it be bureaucrats, whether it be corporate capital. The internet can do it to some extent, but it is also true that when we are having a debate about the internet, it is not accessible to fairly large sections of the population, certainly in a country like developing country like India. And internet across the world, the root servers, they're still controlled by corporations in the West and in America. So, the answers to these questions are not very simple. But at the end of the day, at one level, consumers have to look at vision and be willing to more money paid to get quality information. Otherwise, you will just get trash. If all you want is gossip and sex and violence, and you are not willing to pay that little bit extra to get information which is of relevance to the lives of large numbers of people, you are indeed going to get more and more trash. But at the end of the day, as Vinod and others have pointed out, if you believe in democracy, if you believe that freedom of expression is a fundamental right of every citizen, then we have to seriously think how to rejuvenate journalism and make it truly independent. You know, within the media, there are all kinds of people. There are nice guys and not so nice guys. But today we are in a situation where the stenographer is triumphing over the journalist, where the PR, the public relations practitioner, is way ahead of the journalist who is investigating those who are abusing their powers, who are abusing their authority. I think we need to change the balance. There is a lot of corruption in the media, and there is corruption in the media the world over. But I think each and every citizen also has to pay attention that, you know, democracy and freedom of expression would be meaningless without, you know,
the assertion of the right, I think.
Without an, you see, look at India. It's such a heterogeneous country.
Right. Paranja, Seema also wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just want to say something as well. Can I come in?
Yeah.
You know, this, I sort of disagree a little bit with what went before. I don't think that either India gets what it deserves, or the media or the people get the media they deserve. I think it's become, you know, it used to hold true a long time ago. Over the years, it has become far more complicated. Just like politics has become very complicated, it has become a rich man's game, it's become a muscle man's game, it's become a criminal's game. And when you as a candidate, as a voter, look around and you see 5 choices of 5 different political parties, but not really any choice between the candidates or the kind of muscle power that, or the money power that's used, you might not be able to make the correct choice. And that is happening over and over again over the last maybe 15 to 20 years, particularly since money power became very, very powerful. So I don't think that India is in that position where it gets where the people get the government they deserve. I think we as the people always deserve better. Similarly with the media has become so complicated. It has been completely controlled. It is, you know, how do I, as a normal reader who just buys one newspaper every day? We must remember as journalists that the ordinary reader doesn't have access to the kind of information that we have, where we can pick and choose and decide. We still believe, as a reader living in one of the houses where we buy one newspaper, we read it. And we still somehow, while we don't like what the media is telling us, we know that it is sensational every time we think we don't have the, what should I say, the wherewithal to differentiate between the lie, the paid news, the half-lie, the disinformation, the sensationalism. It's not very easy to ask a person who gets one newspaper in the morning, quickly reads it, and goes out thinking what it to be true. So we have to, you know, I know it's very difficult what everybody said, I agree. And I think it's it's impossible for us to really, at the moment, bring in something better. But I think the way does lie through the social media. And I think the under 40 generation of the urban generation, unfortunately, not the poor yet and not the rural areas yet, but to some extent, one will have to use that and should use that to spread true and good information, and to take the internet away from, you know, from all the terrible things that have occupied it, and try and, you know, sort of make it as, what should I say, mature, responsible, honest, committed, courageous, etc.
All right, on that note, we'll have to wrap up. That's it in a little present. Yeah, sure, fine.
A little point, I don't know. I think, you know, like you have the fan clubs of various film stars in this country. Why can't there be fan clubs of newspapers? And those fans can become pressure groups, maybe as a small beginning, you know, and they saying that, look, this was the paper we idolized. And this is what it has become. This was a paper that was bequeathed to me by my father. And it used to be such a great read and such a great education. And look what it has become now. Now, if you do that, if you shame them, if you shame the producers of newspapers, that is a kind of a peer pressure or social pressure that is brought about. this by word of mouth. And I think that it happens to some extent in Kerala, where, you know, perennially the Malayalam Manorama is compared with Mathrubhumi and vice versa. And people say which is better. And they're educated people. And they sit at the chopas, at the chai shops, at other places, and they discuss it. And I think that level of consciousness is missing in Northern India, because Northern India has gotten used to the language, the kind of language we hear on certain television channels in Hindi. I'm sorry to say this, no offenses meant. And also the kind of language which was used in the recent election campaign. It clicked with the people because they're used to that language. And you know, look at it, how much of harm it has done to public discourse in this country.
Fair enough. Rather ominous words there from the editors, and they really want you, the viewer, to really decide and really put pressure on the kind of content, the news that you want. That is what you should demand from journalists all over and from media houses. Thank you very much, Seema, for coming in, and also Bappa Mukherjee, all the way from the US. Mr. Vinod Sharma and Venkatesh Ramakrishnan, it was a pleasure to have you in the studio as well. Well, that's it in our little presentation. What do you think about the corporatization of media, as we are calling it? Tweet into us, send us a Facebook comment. Go to indiapostlive.com, view this video and think about really your rights. It's ultimately the information that is coming to you for you, so might as well assert yourself this time around. Thanks so much for watching.